and welcome to History Through Fiction, the podcast. I'm your host, Colin Mustful, and today I'm delighted to be joined by our very own Carol M. Cram, author of the Choir. Carol, welcome.
Thank you, Colin, for having me. This is great.
Well, I'd like to just start with what is this novel about? Who's in it? Who are these main characters, and what is the setting for it?
So the choir is set in the 1890s in northern England in a fictional mill town that I've called Brierston. It's also partially set in London. And the novel tells the story of two estranged friends. The main character is Eliza Kingwill. She is a working class mom living in this mill town. Her husband works in the mill. He's not particularly nice to her, and she has five daughters. And Eliza, at the beginning of the novel, we find out right away that she is planning to leave him, which is not easy thing for a working class woman to do in the 1890s or indeed now, because where was she going to get the money? The other main character is Ruth. Ruth and Eliza were childhood friends, and then they became estranged for reasons that become evident as the novel progresses. And Ruth is a famous singer in London. She has made it. Both women have beautiful voices. Eliza did not have the opportunity. She became a mother very young at 17 with her five daughters, and she did not get the opportunities that Ruth did. And Ruth went off to London and became rich and famous, and she has dinner with the Prince of Wales. And so the journey becomes these two women dealing with various setbacks and difficulties and eventually finding some kind of reconciliation.
And of course, it's called The Choir, and it centers around this singing competition. Was that a regular event at that time and place?
Well, it's really interesting. Choir competitions were big time in the late Victorian era. They're actually started by a woman called Mary Wakefield, who has a cameo appearance in the novel, and she started choir competitions in the 1880s. She was a singer herself, and she thought that this would be a great way for people, particularly working class and rural people, to be able to come together and make music. So she started this competition up in Kendal in the Lake District, and it grew and grew and grew until by the time the novel opens, which is 1897, the choir competition movement was huge in England. There were choir competitions all over England. And choirs there'd be church choirs, there'd be ladies and gentlemen choirs, but there'd also be working class choirs, such as the women in my novel. So the Eliza and some of her friends, although she doesn't actually have friends, which is one of the things that happens in the novel, they decide to enter a choir competition because Eliza sees this as an opportunity to make the money she needs in order to leave her abusive marriage with her five daughters and find safety. So the idea of women coming together and singing, it was the only time in the week when they got together to rehearse, when they would kind of get away from really very difficult and dreary lives. You know, often with numerous children, some of them still worked in the mill. You know, it was a difficult life, and music was gave them a way of getting some fulfillment, getting some companionship, some community. So music is almost like another character in the novel and about the redemptive power of music. And both Eliza and Ruth are musicians, just in different ways. And later on in the novel, Ruth is a bit of a fall from grace because she was like super famous, and now she loses everything, and she has to find something to do. So she becomes a judge, and as luck would have it, in the choir, she will be the judge of the choir that Eliza is singing in.
Can you talk a little bit more about this, both the circumstances for Eliza and for Ruth? You call this a working class choir. So maybe give us a little insight into what that really meant in 1897 in a British mill town, of like that escape that she was able to get. At the same time, Ruth is kind of a big step down for her. So can you kind of compare and contrast the two circumstances?
Well, yes, because for Eliza and the other women in the choir, um, entering this choir competition and they go off to Whitby, which is, like a big deal to actually leave their husbands and children for even a day. This is a big deal to be able to be in a choir and go beyond their very circumscribed situation. Whereas for Ruth, she was a star and now she's a choir adjudicator. So it is a huge step down. But both women need to find some self-fulfillment, some self-actualization in the choices that they end up making, both to, to sing in the choir and to, in Ruth's case, to become a judge of choirs and to realize that maybe she's more than just this pretty face on the stage that she had been. She needs to find herself again, as she both women need to find who they really are beyond the roles that they have been assigned in life or that they've taken on.
A lot of our novels are almost like biographical fiction based on real events and real people. This
Mm.
is more of a real deep historical setting, but you have fictionalized these characters and even the Milltown itself. Can you talk about uh, creating this realistic people within an authentic history and how your imagination was able to bring the narrative together?
Gosh, that's a difficult question. Uh, Actually, the choir, or at least the initial idea for the novel, is very loosely based on my own heritage. My grandmother who was born in Yorkshire in the 18, well, in 1906, actually, she came to Canada as a very young girl, but she would talk often about her grandmother, who she didn't really like very much. And her grandmother is my Eliza. I put it forward a bit because actually she would have been younger, and I know for a fact that Eliza, the real one, was in an abusive relationship and had actually six daughters and needed to get out of it. And she did. And I always wondered when I was, putting the novel or thinking about the novels, how did she get out? And I know that she was musical because my grandmother was musical. So, and then I found out all about choir competitions. So that's how it all kind of worked in together. I thought, okay, the what if for this novel is how, what if she can sing? Is that going to be a way that she can get out of her situation and take her children to safety, which is her main goal? Although as the novel progresses, she finds, joy again in singing and realizes that she is worth something because she's pretty low self-esteem at the very beginning of the novel, does Eliza.
So this, I believe, is your fourth published novel. Is that right?
This is the fifth,
Fifth.
yes. Yeah. The fourth,
And
it is the fourth historical novel.
okay.
Yeah.
And they all include art or music in
Yep.
some way. Can you talk about what inspires you about the arts to write about them?
Well, the arts is everywhere in my life. Yeah. My husband is a painter and a jazz drummer. So, we're constantly surrounded by art. We love art. He does exhibitions all over the place, so we travel for those. I have played piano since I was 5, so I'm not as a professional musician, but I play almost every day. So music is a huge part of my life. My brother was a quite a noted jazz composer in Canada. My sister-in-law was a theater director. So, and everything I've always done pretty much all my life, except for teach computers for 20 years, apart from that, has been involved in the arts. It's just a big part of my life. So when I was starting to write novels and thinking about what I wanted to write about, I thought, well, there's so many stories in the arts. Why don't I start there? And so my first published novel was about a visual artist in the Middle Ages, of a female artist who was fictional as well. And then the second one was about music, a woman composer in the 19th century. Third one was about theater. I did my master's in theater, so that was a huge part of my life as well. So then this one ended up to be about choirs, which is, I love choirs. I don't sing in a choir because I can't sing, but I used to play piano for them, and I love them. And so I thought, okay, this is her way out, is through the choir. And it's also this whole thing about how choirs and music can bring people together, especially these working class women who have very little in their lives. Like it's fairly grim life that they have. And this is one time or twice a week that they can get away as I said earlier, and be together and sing.